Sisters who watch. Sisters who watch. Sisters who watch.
Poor Things.
Hey, y'all. Hey. Hi, family.
Hello.
Welcome to Sisters Who Watch.
I'm Shelby.
And I'm Laura, and we're sisters who watch everything. TV, movies, sports, concerts, and even really, really weird offbeat movies.
Very
My
unique.
goodness.
Whew.
We love to watch, and we love talking about it even more. Today we're watching
Poor Things. Yorgos Lanthimos' newest dramedy film. Whew.
Get
it's a
ready.
Good one. Yeah. Hope we all are prepared.
Yes. And before we get into it, please go give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Yes.
5 stars,
5 stars only.
We appreciate the support. It keeps the lights on. And make sure to auto-download our episodes and subscribe to our Spotify and Apple Podcast pages, as well as our YouTube channel. And follow us on all social medias at Sisters Who Watch. TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. We're there. So go find us.
Everywhere.
Thanks. All right, Shelby. Okay, give us the background of Poor Things.
Whew. So if you have not heard about this yet, it's a very unique film that's buzzing because of Emma Stone's performance.
Yes.
Before we dive in, let's read the logline. Brought back to life by an unorthodox scientist, a young woman runs off with a lawyer on a whirlwind adventure across the continents. Free from the prejudices of her times, she grows steadfast in her purpose to stand for equality and liberation. Wow.
Oh.
And this film is directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, who is a Greek director. He's known for making very unique stuff. So if you are familiar with him already, you're not surprised that Poor Things is quirky. His last movie was The Favorite, which also starred Emma Stone, Olivia Colman, Rachel Weisz, which was really good and also award-winning. Before that, he had Killing the Sacred Deer and The Lobster. So all his movies are offbeat. I actually saw Killing the Sacred Deer in Cannes in 2017. Whew, that was crazy. So all his movies are crazy. Poor Things, not only directed by him, but written by Tony McNamara, based on a book, Poor Things, by Alistair Gray. And then it premiered at the Venice Film Festival last fall of 2023, and won the Golden Lion, which is like the big award. So it was basically crowned the best film at the Venice Film Festival. And then it was recently released in theaters by Searchlight Pictures. So it is out now. Go to the theaters, people. You can see it.
That's it. I saw it on Free Popcorn Day at Alamo Draft House.
Hey, we love a good deal.
Yes, we do.
It's people in the theaters.
Yes. So, and also, we're dressed in honor of Bella Baxter today, Emma Stone's character. I have the puffy sleeves and the middle part
long
with
sleeves,
the hair pushed back.
Yes, very drastic middle part, hair pushed back, sitting tall, long neck, just like Bella Baxter.
Puffy sleeves, exactly. So we're embodying her today. And so what else, Shelby, were you expecting coming into this movie?
Well, because I have seen his last few films, I know that he's quirky and offbeat. But going into it, people kept saying, oh, that's an interesting one. Our brother was like, oh, when you see it, be careful. I'm like, what? Like, the way everyone was talking about it made it seem a little concerning. So I was concerned to see it. I was like, what is this movie about? Dang, everyone's being a little like cagey when they explain it.
Right.
I do know why now, but I was a little skeptical going in. But the movie has been getting so much critical acclaim and awards buzz. It had Golden Globe wins for Best Comedy or Musical. Emma Stone won the Golden Globe for Best Comedy Actress. And then it got 11 Oscar nominations. So I was like, okay, I have to see this movie. Everyone's talking about it. And you know us, we like to watch the movies nominated for Oscars and are getting awards buzz. So I just felt like I had to. But
100%.
Going in, I was like, okay, this is a good movie, clearly, because people are talking about it. It's getting awards buzz, but also a interesting movie since everyone was saying, "Oh yeah, you're in for a ride." It's like, okay, whenever you say that, it's like I'm concerned.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I heard of a few people who had seen it and were like, yeah, it's really weird. And I was like, oh. And I know that we had been talking about it, that we heard it's like incredibly offbeat. We don't typically watch or enjoy offbeat movies.
No.
So I was like, I probably won't see it. And I just heard, yeah, it's like very graphic, over the top, like bizarre. And I was like, people are not selling me on this movie. So
No.
I was like, do I want to see this? But then of course Emma Stone is winning like every single award, right? And it just felt like, okay, like everyone's talking about it, let me go see it. I saw it a matinee. I was like, let me see it early in the day. Empty theater, right? I was like, don't want too many people around. And yeah, so I was expecting the same thing. I was like concerned. I was like, what am I about to see? Right? Yes. But to my, not necessarily to my surprise, but it had a lot of really interesting and compelling themes in the film. First, I mean, gender and gender roles is just massive.
Yes.
Massive in the movie. And because you see, like, Bella, Emma Stone's character, is surrounded by men pretty much the entire movie.
Yeah. The only other woman is like the maid that helps out in Godwin's house. And of course, like the women that we eventually meet at like the brothel and stuff, but and on the boat. But for the most part, you're right. She's like the main woman. And she doesn't really understand gender roles because she basically has been brought back to life from the dead. Her newborn baby's brain is in her head. So she has the mind of a baby in a woman's body and is learning all these new things. So she's learning how to walk, she's learning how to talk, and she's learning that people expect her to act a certain way and to eat a certain way and to not want to talk about sex at a dinner table. And she's like, what? Because when you're a kid and a baby, right, you're not taught all the social norms. So it was interesting seeing all the things that we learn and mold into as an adult through her eyes. And like she started to challenge it. Like, wait, why does a woman have to act this way? Like, I can't talk about sex or have a one night stand, but men can? That's not fair. And it's just interesting seeing her start to like wrestle with that.
Right. It kind of reminds me of Barbie in that way, seeing these, you know, women from a contained environment getting thrown into the real world and being like, this is not
fish
normal.
out of water.
Right? Like, why is everyone treating me like this? Because it's like, logically, the, you know, the misogyny of the real world doesn't make any sense, right? Because it doesn't.
No.
But we're just trained to, you know, be like, oh, a woman has to do this, a woman has to act like this. Men make decisions. She's probably like, why are all these men making these decisions for me, right? And yeah, and she's confused. She's like, why is this how the world is, right? And as you kind of talked about, like socialization and like maturing, just growing up and youth and adulthood, all those together, like that was so huge. And I thought that was really interesting because you see like the world is forming her into this person, but she just wants to do whatever she wants. But Ruffalo, like Duncan, he's like, no, you can't do this. You can't say this. Be respectful. You don't talk about sex at the dinner table. You don't mock people. You don't spit up your food, even though it's absolutely revolting. That was not a good accent. I love that line. So I just thought like she had to grow up pretty much instantly. And I just thought like it's looking at nature versus nurture. Like how are we just, you know, like is it in our nature to act a certain way, or is it because the people around us and our environment that make us who we are?
It's such a good point. And you see that also when Bella returns to her ex-husband. She's not that woman anymore, right? She's not the woman that wanted to like kill her life and jump off a bridge.
Yeah.
And you see her come back into this environment where her husband is really mean and everyone's like, oh, you're not as mean as you used to be. And it's like, maybe the environment Bella used to be in contributed to why, right? She didn't want to live anymore and why she was being so rude. And Bella now is like, this isn't me. And so you see like the environment you're in, to your point, can affect you and like how you socialize and how you act to others around you.
Another theme kind of related is freedom and liberation, right? She was trapped in this house. She had never been outside and she was dying to go outside. She's like, Papa, take me outside.
And she was having a fit like a kid would, like punching, throwing things, because she's learning what it is to communicate and like show that she wants something. And she was like, oh, maybe if I throw a fit, I'll get what I want.
Right. And it worked.
It did.
Like it works with kids. So so it's interesting, like is it in our nature to want to explore and be outside? Because Bella, she instantly was like, I want to go there, right? I want to go outside. And what I thought was so interesting was how Papa was like, okay, fine, we'll take you outside. And how when Duncan, Mark Ruffalo's character, came by the house and was like, you're gonna come with me and we're gonna go on a trip. And he was like, okay. Papa was like, okay, fine, like I will let you go. I was shocked. I was like, you're gonna let Bella run off with this strange man who was clearly so suspect, right? But it showed like he had to let her go, right? He was like, okay, this is right, this is an experiment, right? I gotta let her do her thing because she's not gonna grow here in this house, trapped inside this house.
I also think he started to realize she kept having more extreme reactions, and as she was realizing things, like, oh, this is not just my experiment, it is a human being trying to like figure out her life, and like she has to be able to make some decisions for herself. And she's throwing a fit, she's not going to be happy here. It might have to be a lesson she has to learn on her own. It's almost like kids with parents, like, okay, parents with their kids. It's like, okay, you're going to have to learn the hard way. And Bella kind of had to learn the hard way because going on the trip, she was able to go to new places like Portugal and Greece, but she also ended up having to like be on her own and, use her body to make money because Mark Ruffalo's character was a clown. So I think it was good that he did let her go and understand that she needed the freedom and to choose. But also it was a parent being like, okay, this is on you. Go make some bad decisions and then come back. And she eventually did. Right.
And something that I loved about the movie was the wrap up at the end and the parallels when she was like, okay, the ex-husband comes back and was like, Victoria, I heard you were back. I'm here to save you and bring you back to the house. So she's like, okay, I'm going to go with this guy and see what this house is like. And when he was like, you're not going to leave, and was like, you're going to stay here because if you're out there, you're going to make more bad decisions. And I just thought that was so wild because you see like Papa versus her ex-husband, Alfie, and how Papa was, even though he, what he did wasn't really humane at all.
Interesting character.
Yes. So he was very, very questionable and even like bringing her back to life, right? But he was human enough to let her go and be like, okay, fine, like you gotta experience this world on your own. Even though she was confined to the house at some point. But then you see her husband, who you could argue is more evil than her Papa, confine her to the house again. I was like, wow. Like seeing those at the end and she's like, oh no, I gotta get out of here. Like, I'm not going to be confined again, controlled by a man. This is not happening.
Completely agree. I think that further shows like the gender roles. Okay, the woman has to be in the house. I need her here. I need to be in control. And she's like, wait, what? I just went on this whole trip. I just finally was able to be free. Why do I have to be trapped again? And he was like, no, you're my wife. I want you here. Crazy.
And it just shows that women, right, or just children in general, like children when they're young, they're controlled by their parents, rightfully so, right, and they're confined to the house. And then you can kind of say that once women are married, they're, oftentimes they're confined and trapped in these situations, confined to the home, and their husbands want to control them. So you kind of see like the life cycle. You're like, the kid at home, the parent is controlling them, and then she's single and out and free. And then, oh, she's trapped again in her marriage. And she's like, oh, now I see why the old me jumped off a bridge, right? And it's like really sad. And I remember she asked, like, why was I so sad? And she's like, yeah, this situation is bad. So even a newborn baby in Emma Stone's body can recognize this is a really toxic, horrible situation.
I think it's really telling that you said a newborn baby, a child, can recognize, oh, this is sexist. Oh, this isn't fair to women. Oh, I am being trapped because of my gender. It's like, that's telling. Really telling.
It really is.
Another big theme that we have not mentioned yet is sexuality. If anything, it might be the biggest theme. Like, the reason I feel like people said this movie is so interesting is because sex is a big part of it. And there's a lot of nudity. It's graphic. And if anything, that is my big kind of gripe with the film. I don't think it's necessary because everything that we talked about, big important themes that they're trying to like showcase. I don't know if all the sex and nudity was needed. But basically, Bella, right, this Frankenstein like creation who is a woman with a newborn baby, is discovering like how to pleasure herself and what sex is. And she's like, oh, I like this feeling. So I am going to follow a man I just met, Duncan, to go on a trip and just have sex with him. And then she decides when she needs to make money, like, oh, I'll just work at a brothel and have sex to make money. Like, she doesn't really care. And it's interesting because Mark Ruffalo's character Duncan's like, why would you do that? That's awful. You shouldn't do that as a woman. And she's like, I'm just here to make money. That's what I have to do. And it very graphic scenes, but it's interesting. Like, she's very liberated. Like, she, when she decides to go with Duncan on the trip, just kind of have sex, she's like, well, I'll be back for you, Rami Youssef. Like, I'll still marry you. I just want to have my fun, and then I'll come back. And it was like so matter of fact. And it's funny because nowadays people would like look down at that like, what is she doing? That's crazy. But she was just like, I'm free, I'm young, I just want to enjoy my life. So I think throughout, it's almost like how men kind of behave, right? But now you have this woman doing it. So it was like kind of shocking. But I do think it was cool to see like a liberated woman like embracing sex in that way, because you rarely see it. Was it too much at times for me? Yes. But I do think it was good for like the story and like the message.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I like the moments when I remember, I forgot where it was, but maybe Portugal. She was like, oh yeah, I had sex with this guy, and Mark Ruffalo was like, what? You're with me? And she was like, but I have sex with you, so it's fine. And he was like, he was like, no, and he like got so mad at her. Duncan was such a wild character.
Crazy.
I can't. But yeah, like to her, she's like so perfectly like logical and so shameless. She doesn't, because women are trained to be like, oh, like you can't talk about sex, like you have to be like proper, you can't be promiscuous, right? But she's just like, this feels good, I'm gonna do what I want, I can be with him and still be with him. And and the brothel scenes were so interesting, especially when she first was like, I need money and I want to have sex with other men, so this seems perfect. I can't.
Crazy.
So yeah, I thought it was like such interesting commentary, because she was like, oh yeah, like I worked there, and she started to realize like, oh, like people think this is a bad thing, right? Because Ruffalo was like, how dare you, why would you do that? And then she would tell Rami Youssef's character Max and Alfie, and they were like, I guess we can forgive you, so she was instantly shamed, even though she's like, but I bought us lunch, right? This is what you wanted, you needed money. So I thought that was like super, super interesting. Yeah, definitely it was over the top.
Uh-huh.
Not necessary, but yeah, I agree that the movie had like such interesting commentary
Yeah.
that I enjoyed, but yeah, it was a lot. It was definitely over the top.
Should we move into our favorite moments?
Yes. I referenced it earlier, but when she was at dinner with Duncan and she was like eating food at this fancy place and she spit it out. She was like, "Why would I keep it in my mouth if it's absolutely revolting?" I just thought that was and they had that in the trailer too, so I remember that moment. But that stood out to me because it's correct. It's like, why are we? But we're taught to be,
We're trained and
polite.
conditioned, like, oh, if you don't like something, don't spit it out.
Just
finish it.
smile.
Smile.
Yeah.
Okay. And then stop eating. It's hilarious.
Yeah, I really loved that scene.
No, that's a good one. I think all the moments where she's doing whatever she wants and people are like, what? I thought it was like a fun take on society and societal norms because she's just doing what we're all thinking, right?
Right.
And want to do, but don't because of comparison or standards or what we've been conditioned we think is right. So I think that was fascinating.
Yeah. The same dinner scene, I loved when Bella and Duncan were dancing together. Like, that was so bizarre.
Crazy. They were clearly like not happy with each other and were
No.
moving around like crazy. It wasn't even like a cute dance. It was like very aggressive and like
She was
stiff
like,
and
you see in the trailer, she's like doing this weird arm thing and like moving her. Yeah, it was wild. That was really funny. And Mark Ruffalo was like, "What are you doing?" And like trying to like
match it.
match.
I will say, Mark Ruffalo, he normally plays like the straight guy, the quiet guy. I have never seen him in a role like this before. He was so good. I was shocked. He played like crazy, unhinged, like a womanizer. I was like, who is this guy? I was like, not typical Mark Ruffalo. He was so
very
good.
bizarre. Yeah, he was great. He was so unhinged. And then he was like starting a fight right after the dancing because Bella was talking to some guy. Oh my goodness.
Crazy.
Cray.
I liked when Bella started to do things on her own, right? So initially, right, she's only confined to the house. She goes on this trip, but is only spending time with Duncan. But then when Duncan kind of kidnaps her and takes her on the boat,
crazy,
which is nuts, she decides to do things on her own and make some friends on the cruise, including Jared Carmichael. And with her new friends, she starts reading books. And I honestly feel like that helps her like further like learn and educate herself on like culture and the world. And the moment when they get off the boat and she sees all of the poor people in slums and she's crying, like, that's not fair, that's not right. And she tries to give money to them. I think that showed you like how she was learning on the fly. Like, even though, right, she started to be able to handle more things, like she's trying to figure things out. And you're like, whoa, wow, she is just learning what, it means to be rich and poor. I also liked towards the end when she goes back to visit a dying Godwin, her papa. And after talking with him and then seeing Rami again, she's like, I know what I want to do. I want to be a doctor. And I was like, I love that, because circling back to the beginning, when you see Godwin in class, most of his students were men. I don't know if there was a woman in there. Yeah. And I think it's great that Bella, not falling prey to stereotypes or gender roles, is like, no, I want to be a doctor like my papa.
Yes, I totally agree. I think the movie wrapped up pretty well. Another one of my favorite lines was when she meets the older woman and Gerard Carmichael on the boat, and she's like, this woman hasn't had sex in 20 years. Remember?
Crazy. And Mark Ruffalo was like, what are you doing? Don't say that. Stop.
And the other two were like, no, like, she's great. It was so interesting, like, who was receptive to her and who wasn't.
Yeah.
Right? Because some people love someone who is just like really authentic and like unfiltered and just themselves. And some people like hate that. And there were times where Duncan, Mark Ruffalo, loved that about her. Like he loved how she was so spontaneous and kind of crazy and unfiltered. But then when he was making her look bad, he was like, no, you need to be quiet, right? And that kind of goes to one of my least favorite moments when he threw the books off the cruise ship. That was insane.
Ugh.
It's like, oh, she's has her new friends. She's more independent. She's learning more, because before she was, she's naive, right? And Mark Ruffalo was, the only person that she stuck to, right? And that's all she knew. And then she started making new friends, started reading, and she's like, oh, there's way more than just him. And he became so threatened by that and so threatened by these books that he just tossed them overboard. And that quote, a well-read woman is a dangerous creature. It's like a famous quote. And that instantly made me think of that, because it's like, they don't want her to read. They don't want us to read and get educated, right? No. It's like another Barbie reference. It's like Ken going into the real world and being like, oh my gosh, men rule everything. And he's reading all these books and he's picking up on everything. Like, he was like, oh my gosh, like, we have the power. And Mark Ruffalo, he's like, she can't have the power because I have the power. She can't learn. She can't keep on reading because that threatens me and my control over her, right? So I thought that was like so wild when he tossed the books overboard, because it felt like so today, being like, no, we can't let women get too smart because they're going to start replacing us and threatening us.
Well, facts. It's a lot of parallels. I think that's a really good least favorite moment. To be honest, every time Duncan got mad, that was kind of a least favorite moment for me. Him like getting jealous and crying and shouting and like throwing, and just, he had a lot of bad scenes. I also didn't like any kind of like the graphic like surgery or body scenes. Like when Godwin is in the class, like opening up bodies, teaching, the students how to be a doctor. I was like, oh. Even then, when you go inside his crazy home and he's operating inside his home, like, too much. The scene when Bella's trying to like figure out what things are and is like, oh, like scissors or something, and just starts scissoring a head of a dead body. I like gagged.
The eyes.
I was like, ugh.
Choking on my free popcorn at Alamo Draft House. Like, what's going on?
Gross. Good thing I'd already eaten. Like, ooh, man, that was tough.
I know. Yeah, and I hated when he was like slicing a brain, and then he was putting the brain in the head, and it was just, that was not for me.
Or when, because his dad had like operated on him and taken a lot of his intestines out, he had to, this was the weirdest thing. This is the weirdest thing. He had to, whenever he ate, like put some kind of thing in him that would lead him to like burp these really big like gas bubbles. Disgusting. Every time that happened, I was like closing my eyes.
It was so weird.
And you could tell that every time Rami saw it, he was like freaked out.
Get me out of here. Why was Rami Youssef? Why was he there? Get out of this house. This guy's crazy.
Max was a little naive himself. I think he just wanted to like learn from his, professor, like an icon, and he didn't care. But there were way too many red flags. I mean,
get out of that house.
He did eventually figure out something was wrong with Bella. He was like, this is a walking red flag. But he shouldn't have been there that long. I agree. He should have moved out or something.
Yeah. And he was like, marry her. Papa was like, marry her. And he's like, sure.
I was like, do you have a backbone? Do you have any interests in your life? What is going on?
You haven't been doing anything but like take care of her like a child. And you're like, yeah, I'll marry her. I'm in love with her. And
Crazy.
Godwin was like, oh, well, you have to live here. And he's like, okay. It's like, you don't have anything better to do, Rami Youssef? Max?
Crazy.
Bizarre.
I was happy to see him, but his character was kind of crazy. He was the
I know,
nice guy. He was the nice guy,
yes,
but like almost too nice or willing at times. I'm like, dude, what's going on?
definitely. Yeah, I'm happy for him because Shelby and we watched his Hulu show called Rami. So good. Go watch it. It's about like an Egyptian American family, Muslim family navigating, just American life. So good, so funny,
Great
wild
show.
show.
But his
Wild
character's
show.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, go check it out.
Ooh.
Okay, Shelby, onto our categories.
Yes.
Who or what did you love to hate in Poor Things?
We mentioned this briefly, but I think Papa's an interesting character.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Dr. Godwin, Willem Dafoe's character. I think he was messed up by his dad. You get little inklings and little nuggets on how his dad would operate on him and take things out of him to see if things would work. So I think because of that, he looks deformed, but also he is obsessed with like being a doctor and operating and testing things out. Like Bella is his creation. You know, he was shocked to find that you could put the brain of a newborn baby in a woman and bring her back to life. Like he did all those things, which are inhumane, right? And technically, I guess you could say he saved a woman, but she jumped off a bridge for a reason, right? She tried to kill herself and her newborn baby, and then you bring her back to life as a baby. Like, it was just crazy that he did that.
Bizarre.
And suspect. But I do think his character evolved. He gave his daughter Bella agency. He let her be free. And then at the end, when he was on his deathbed, you know, he like was sharing advice with her and Max. And I do think he ended up in a better place than he started.
I'm aligned. I think he had a good story arc. Something else I have for love to hate. The film, the cinematography, the wardrobe was all very unique. Emma Stone had a very, Bella had a very, Bella had a very, striking look. It had a very harsh look.
Yes.
The middle part, as you see, the jet black hair, the jet black brows, the huge puffy sleeves. She wore those like little shorts and these like boots.
Costume design was crazy.
Yeah.
Production design, I agree as well. It was like when they went to Portugal, I was like, where are they? It doesn't look like they're in Portugal. Like,
no.
The cruise, like, it was very interesting. It looked like we were in an alternate reality.
Yes. Yeah.
So it was
something
cool,
else.
But I was like, does this fit the story? You know, it was interesting.
Yeah. And some of the camera angles, remember they had like the fish, like the
Yes.
fisheye kind of camera? Like that was jarring. The whole movie was just visually a bit overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
What is going on? So odd. Yeah, so those little transition cards were weird. Those were weird. Okay, who or what do you have for hate to hate?
Even though Mark Ruffalo's acting was amazing, his character was a clown. First of all, he was hired to be a lawyer to create like the marriage contract for Max and Bella. And he says he's going to the bathroom and then runs into the house to try and like find who this Bella is. Then he comes back later, climbs to the roof and like kisses her and is like, run away with me.
Crazy.
Then he isn't nice to her on the trip, right? Like throws off her books, kidnaps her, like yells at her, gets jealous whenever she's like being sexually active, and just bad character. And then at the end, he brings her ex-husband back and ruins the wedding between Max and Bella. I'm like, this guy can't get any worse.
Clown.
Tough. Speaking of clowns, my other hate to hate is the ex-husband, Alfie.
Yeah.
When he comes into the picture, you get a sense of why Bella's old self, Victoria, probably like left him and tried to kill herself because
Yeah.
he was controlling, he was mean, he was making fun of his servants. He had a gun and was pretending to shoot people. Like, that's not funny. That's
No.
scary. And then he was threatened Bella and like, if you don't stay here, I'm going to kill you. I was like,
The
what?
absolute audacity.
Aren't I your wife? That is wild.
Yeah.
Wild.
And when he would, and remember, he was like, your sexuality and your desire is what's making you so evil and crazy. So I'm going to sew up your genitals so you can't even access them. And I was like, this man is evil. Like, this man is evil.
That's when she knew she had to leave. She overheard the
like,
conversation. No. She was like, not my sexual energy.
No. Not my desire.
She's like, you're not taking that. Crazy.
That was the final straw. She's like, what? I can't have sex. I gotta go home.
Not that I'm gonna be trapped here, that you're gonna take that away from me. Screaming.
No.
You know what Bella's priorities were at.
It's so interesting. He was taking away like every single ounce of agency and freedom that she had. And it's like, this guy, her Papa Godwin, who, inhumanely brought her back to life. He treated her better than her supposed husband, who's supposed to love her and take care of her. It just shows you, like, evil. Like, Alfie is the real villain of the movie.
Definitely the real villain of the movie.
Yeah.
I think another villain, right, is Godwin's father. Again, we barely see him,
gosh.
but clearly he did stuff to mess up Godwin and lead him to who he was. The last thing I'll mention for Hate to Hate, I have to say the overly sexual scenes, like in the brothel, how many times did we need to see Emma Stone having sex? How many times did we need to see her naked? Like, it was a lot. I also think just the overly sexual movies these days are a bit too much for me.
Yeah.
Like, Saltburn. We don't want to go on a tangent, but between Saltburn and Poor Things, I'm like, these movies do not need to be this crazy.
I know.
They do not need bathtub scenes. They do not need brothel scenes. I think we're okay.
Yeah, I'm with you. I do agree, like, the law of diminishing returns. I think that's the right theory here. It's like, yeah, like, how many scenes do we need to see to be like, oh, she, like, we get it. She's, enjoys having sex. And yes, she's at a brothel and she's realizing, oh, Mark Ruffalo was better. It was actually, a good person, a good partner to have sex with. And these men are bad. And like, I need to make money. And it just, it felt like we didn't need to, like, it was reinforced a lot. And it's like, okay, we get the point, right? Like, we get it. So I do agree. We definitely could have reeled it back with all those scenes, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Love to love?
Yes. So first, I do have Bella here. I do really like how, like, she wasn't tainted by all the stereotypes and things that we're taught and trained to do as women specifically. She was just her. She just did what felt good. She did what felt right. And she was just herself. And she said what she wanted to. She didn't care what other people thought. She was like so shameless and so authentically her. And that is so threatening to men specifically. It just shows, like, if we are just ourselves and we speak up and we do what we want and say what we're actually thinking and stand up for ourselves, like, we're unstoppable. And, men are insecure when women are like that, right? And we see that over and over again throughout the movie. So I did really like how, unapologetic she was.
I'm aligned. I also think this is the best performance I've seen Emma Stone have.
100%.
And I can see why now there's a lot of awards buzz for her and how it's between like her and Lily Gladstone for the Oscar for Best Actress. Like, I really think she was amazing in this. Way better than in La La Land, which she actually won an Oscar for. Like,
bizarre.
Crazy when you think about it. But yeah, she
Doesn't make
transformed
sense.
for this. Like, she had to be like Frankenstein-like, and I think she showed the evolution. She acted her butt off, so I agree.
Yes.
Bella was great. Emma Stone was great.
Yeah, I totally agree. Rami Youssef's character, Max, even though we said he was probably a bit delulu for staying in that house for so long, I did like his character because he was the one secure man in the film who accepted and loved Bella for exactly who she was, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was really cool to see because, yes, oftentimes, you know, men are threatened by women and they want to control us and stuff. But like we said, not all men are evil, right?
Yeah.
There are
good
really
ones out there too.
Yes, there are great ones out there, and I think that was really important for the movie because I feel like the villain here was so clearly like men controlling Bella, but you see Max just love her and embrace her for exactly who she is. So I thought that was really refreshing to see, even though she's very unique and she is.
Mm-hmm. And she realized that at the end. She's like, Rami's the one I want to marry. After dealing with Duncan, after being in the brothel, being with her ex-husband for a brief amount of time, she was like, oh, of all the men I've met, Max is by far the nicest one that treats me well, and that's who I want to be with.
100%. Nice guys finish first.
That's right. Took her a while, but she got there.
She had to travel to
sleep with some other people, but she figured it out.
Yeah, she figured it out. Something else I also loved, and something you don't really see that much, all these British accents, and Americans doing British accents. You rarely see that. It's always the opposite. Brits doing American accents.
Crazy. Yeah, you're right. And they did a good job. I thought the actors were all phenomenal. Yes. They all did a really good job.
Yeah, Emma Stone, American. Mark Ruffalo, American. Rami Youssef, American.
Willem Dafoe, American? Yeah, they're all American.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, so that's why when you said that, it was like, yeah, they're all American.
You never see that. It's always the opposite.
Yeah, it's fascinating. The last thing I have under Love to Love is creativity. Just felt like this movie was so unique. And yes, it's kind of a spin on like Fish Out of Water or Frankenstein, but the commentary, the way it was shot, the acting, like everything about it I thought was fresh. So I do applaud Yorgos Lanthimos and the team because I thought it was a very unique, creative film. And we love seeing creativity. The industry needs more of it.
Totally. Okay, are you ready for a game?
I am.
Red flag, green flag. 1, 2, 3. Okay, Shelby. Is it a red flag to go on a trip with someone you just met?
Yes. It is a red flag. I think if Bella could go back, she probably would not have chosen Duncan as the person to go on a trip with. And I think it shows how she was naive, right? And she had to make some mistakes to figure it out. Like, you typically would not go on a trip with someone you just met who, like, followed you into your room and, like, climbed onto your roof. Like, that's stranger danger. Like, stay away.
Yes.
So in this particular case, even brighter of a red flag, because Bella was naive, didn't really know this guy. And I think in general, if you're going to go on a trip, you want to know the person. You want to trust them. Like, you got to be safe. Like, he kidnapped her for a little bit. She was okay, but, you know, that was crazy.
I mean, the fact that she is alive after going on a trip with this psycho, like, he was so unstable. Yeah, girl, count your blessings, because there's... You probably, in most situations, you would not have survived that. Yeah, no. He was not well. Unstable.
So bright red, flashing
definitely
red.
Red flag.
Red. Okay, Laura. Is it a green flag to have no filter? Like Bella?
Ooh, I think it really depends. It's so interesting because it's like, well, after watching this movie, it's like, what does it mean to be polite, right? Because it's just, we're trained to be like, oh, you know, you gotta be ladylike. Don't say what's actually on your mind, right? It's like, what does that actually mean? And so I think for Bella, having no filter was good. I don't know. I think in general, having no filter is probably not a good thing, right? Like, just face value, looking at this question, it's not a green flag because you don't want to be mean to people's faces. I feel like people in just modern regular society are like, I have no filter. Like, they just say mean things to people, and like that's what it
Yeah.
usually means. So I think in that context, no, it's not a green flag. Like, don't just say mean things to people. That's usually how it's used. But I think in the movie, it was good for Bella to just like be herself. And I think having no filter for her, like, she wasn't, like, meanness wasn't really,
No.
in her capacity.
She wasn't conditioned, right? To do that.
Right.
No.
She wasn't conditioned to like try and purposely be mean to people. So I think for her it was a green flag. Like, she was just, being herself and saying what's on her mind. So yeah, I guess a little bit mixed.
I'm aligned. I think for her, no filter meant being her authentic self, meant learning, meant challenging the status quo. And I think in all of those cases, it was a good thing. But present day, people use no filter as an excuse to be mean.
Right?
I'm aligned.
Yeah, totally. Okay, Shelby. Poor Things. Is it a wait or a watch?
So even though I think the movie is too sexual and very oddball and quirky, I think it's a watch. The acting is superb, and I think the themes, messages, and commentary are very interesting and thought-provoking. So worth a watch. Would I watch it with your parents? No. Would I watch it in a packed theater? Probably not. Like,
yeah, I agree with you. I think that, especially if you're really into movies, I think this is like a movie person's movie, like a cinephile movie, right? Like, this is a movie for everyone. So I would say if you're really into, critically acclaimed film, the Oscars, right? Then you'll like it.
yeah.
Yeah, and I agree. Like, I saw it in a pretty empty theater, a matinee, so I thought that was fine, but I would probably just watch it at home. Yeah, I feel like it's a good at-home watch. Yeah, so that's what I would say. Don't watch it with your parents or anything. But I did enjoy the messaging, and it like really made me think a lot, and I thought the themes and the commentary were like really amazing. So I will say that.
I can see why it's getting a lot of awards buzz. So I'm glad I saw it because it does make sense. It does make sense.
Yeah. And Emma Stone completely transforms. She's really good. Okay. Onto our What to Watch segment.
Well, if you want to watch more of Yorgos Lanthimos' content, The Favorite is his last film, which I really liked. You like that too, Laura, right? Yeah. So his last film, still quirky, but not as much so. Not as weird as Poor Things. No. So definitely recommend that. And Olivia Colman won the Oscar for Best Actress for that one. So I definitely recommend watching more Yorgos' content if you like this one.
Yes. Oh, and I also want to ask you, why do you think the movie is called Poor Things?
Well, that's the name of the book. So that's a cop-out answer. It's based on the book. Poor thing is kind of like a demeaning term when you look down on someone. And I think what she might be seen as the poor thing, but in reality, it was everyone else. Like, oh, poor things. You guys are the ones that are living this polite society. You're not speaking your mind. You're following all these societal norms. And I'm the one kind of living my life to the fullest and like being free and exploring. So I think it kind of maybe turns that term on its head, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I like that answer. Yeah. Because from the outside, she's this baby living in a woman's body who, was trapped in this home, and now she's just like, ha ha ha, kind of running around the streets kind of helpless. But yeah, like in reality, she's the one with the power. She's the one who's liberated and empowered, and the people around her are the ones who are going crazy and spiraling. And she's like very confident and standing in her power. So yeah, I agree.
Amazing.
Okay, y'all. If you enjoyed this episode of Sisters Who Watch reviewing 4 things, make sure you give us 5 stars on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, wherever you stream. And make sure you subscribe to our Apple Podcasts and Spotify pages so you get updates for our new episodes. And subscribe to our YouTube page. Check us out there. And make sure you follow at Sisters Who Watch on all social media platforms, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and Twitter. We're there. So go give us a follow.
Yes. We appreciate y'all's support. We want to hear from you, so you can DM us on social media, comment on our posts, answer our Q&As on Spotify. You can also email us at sisterswhowatch@gmail.com. Thank you so much for the support. We appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay watching.